What's up, my martial arts fanatics? Welcome to the system breakdown of Justin Gaethje. As always, I'm Coach Greg. For those of you who are coming over from the other channel, you know that this is a video I had done previously, but honestly, I never felt like I did it justice, so I wanted to reboot this one. When the previous channel got shut down and we started the new channel, I felt like this was a good time to do so, because there's just so much more material I wanted to add to it, and even though a lot of people really liked the Justin Gaethje video I did, I felt like I could do more with it. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the systems that make him so successful. So those of you who are coming to the channel for the first time, I want to welcome you. Make sure you're doing all that fun stuff, subscribe, share, all that cool stuff. But I hope you enjoy this content where I'm going to break down the systems that allow a guy like Justin Gaethje to be so successful. And he's a great case study because, he's an NCAA All-American wrestler who never wrestles because he likes to bang. He puts on very exciting fights. And in fact, those fights are like the stuff of legends. His fight against Michael Chandler is a great example for a system breakdown because when he fought Michael Chandler, this is a guy who has outrageous natural attributes that are superior to Justin Gaethje in a lot of ways. And yet he overcome that explosiveness of Michael Chandler with a systematic approach that allowed him to be successful. And it was done through the use of angles, good tight defensive principles, and a good counter-striking game. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the systems that allowed him to be so successful and allowed him to end the careers of guys like Tony Ferguson and fight the best of the best in guys like Cowboy Cerrone, Eddie Alvarez, Edson Barboza. He's fought nothing but top-tier guys for most of his career and put on amazing fights. So I'm excited to break this down, and I hope you enjoy it. So stay tuned, and let's start breaking down Justin Gaethje. All right, so the principle that we're going to talk about today is we're essentially using the dilemma principle. And this is something that other great fighters that we talked about have done, George St. Pierre, Valentina Shevchenko. They're really good at creating a dilemma in their opponents where if they sit back, I pick you apart, but they're drawing out counters. And the idea is to draw out your attacks so that I can counter you. So if you press the forward on the action on me, I'm going to counter you, and pick you apart. If you sit back and make me come to you, I'm going to pick you apart. I'm going to make you rue the day that you decided not to engage with me. And this is what Justin Gaethje does very well. And he does it through the use of angles and shelling to draw out his attacks and hit his opponents at like weird in-between moments. Let's explain what I mean by this. So the first part is, let's talk about pulling out the attacks. One of the best ways to pull out somebody's attack is to enter their threat range. It's as simple as that. So what does Gaethje do a lot? A lot of his attacks involve putting his head off the line, shelling up, and dropping levels. Right, you'll see this a lot out of him. He'll do it to the left, or he'll take a right step with his right foot and do it to the right. And the idea is that, I've talked about this in the expanding contraction guard in the Nemean fight system. From the outside, I'll be in this shell. Like Peter Yan's really good at this. He sits in this shell. He sits on the long guard, comes into the shell. And this is kind of what Justin Gaethje does. He comes on the outside, drops his head, and he knows that when he enters range like this, it's natural to start throwing shots back at him, right? Trying to catch him with stuff. So what does he do? He absorbs and deflects. He will have shots land on him, but a lot of this stuff is deflecting either on the top of his head or on this rotating shell. If you notice, a lot of times as his high shell comes up, he rotates. It's not like boxing where I can just absorb this all flat, where the boxing glove will just get stuck. You have to do a little bit more rotation in MMA so that this stuff deflects. He does the same thing from the outside against kicks. Whereas kicks come at him, he'll rotate into it to let that stuff deflect off of his forearms, basically. Sometimes from the outside range, you'll also see him swat stuff away as well. But most of it is just rotating. And he does this as he enters into range. Drops his head low, knowing that the natural reaction as he comes forward into range is to draw out punches. Then, once they are spent, he comes back. And what's great about Justin Gaethje is hitting in between moments. We'll talk about this a little bit today. People get set into rhythms when they talk about fighting. Very common. I go, you go, right? This kind of stuff. And there's a feeling that when Gaethje engages, after they go, there's this immediate sense that if he doesn't counter immediately, he's not going to counter. And so Gaethje often will put a slight pause on this, just enough so they go, pop, pop. And they're like, okay, he's not countering, I can sit back and reset. And at that moment, in between, when they feel like the counter's not coming, but before they reset, that's when he attacks. It's the slightest pause, but he is amazing at identifying this and hitting it. Same thing with as guys are sitting on the outside, we'll talk about this later as well, where guys will sit on the outside, and there's a moment before they're getting ready to attack, and everybody's kind of like, okay, am I going to go or are you going to go? And they're feeling each other out. this is when Gaethje will go, and he'll catch it with something quick. So this timing is a really important aspect of his game because it's part of why his counters land so well. So as he moves forward, they throw pop, pop. Now, as they're starting to pull back, he doesn't go immediately when guys are like, pop, pop, okay, they're ready to shell up in that moment. He goes, pop, pop. Then, as guys are starting to recover back, now he comes back and he catches them hard. This is an amazing tactic. That slight pause on it is often enough. But he doesn't do it every time, and that's what makes it so successful. His ability to change the timing on things is amazing. And we'll talk about this more in counters as well, because he does this a lot in his counters, where one time he'll come in, pop, pop, and he goes right into it. Another time he goes in, what, pop, and he puts a slight pause. So it's hard when you're not sure the timing and stuff, and it throws guys off a lot. As they're coming in, they go pop, pop, and they immediately get caught. But then the next time they go pop, pop, and it doesn't come, and so they've had that moment where they can reset. They're like, okay, time to reset, and then they get caught. I hope that makes sense. So one of the most common tactics he does to pull this out is to enter in with the shell. Okay. The next tactic you'll see him do a lot of times, he's got his leg kick. He's well known for the leg kick. One of the things I want to point out on his leg kick is if you notice he does not pivot into the leg kick. This is another area where timing is amazing. He throws leg kicks very similar to how Volkanovski does it, where it's like a reactive shot when you talk about takedowns. When you talk about takedowns in a reactive shot, what that means is I throw a combination, and as you come back with a heavy committed attack, I can come underneath and shoot. Gaethje, like Volkanovski, does this with leg kicks, right? He comes in here, he draws out his punches, he throws, he comes back, and as they move forward with a committed attack, he catches the leg kick. Or if there's an in-between moment of pause where nothing's happening, he catches the leg kick. Either way, he's doing it with no pivot and not giving them a lot of time to adjust. And what's great about it is he adds the high shell drop to it. So guys get used to this and they throw. But then they see this and he hides the leg kick underneath it. It makes it very difficult for them to defend and chuck a leg kick that they can't see because they're too busy looking at this, and because it comes at a weird timing when they're either pressing forward on them or they're sitting here and they see this and the leg kick hides behind it. It's why he lands it so hard and so frequently. And because he doesn't pivot, it's a much less telegraphed thing, and it gives him more mobility off of it. What you'll see him do a lot of times, he throws the leg kick and absorbs. If they throw a shot, he's going to follow it through with a roll under. Most of the time, he throws it, they do nothing, okay, he resets. Pop, right? He goes back to his normal attacks like he was doing. But sometimes he goes to throw it, and he knows that one of the most common reactions when I don't check a kick is to throw a counter cross. Why? Because then I'm going to win the exchange. I eat a leg kick and I go, okay, I throw this down the pipe. He's already planned for this. This is a technique designed to pull out his opponent's crosses. So he comes in here, he absorbs, roll under, and most of the time he likes to throw that left hook. He will sometimes throw the right hook. I actually find I prefer to throw the right hook, but he'll come in here, roll under, and as that punch is coming, pop, lands heavy. It is a beautiful tactic to draw them out. He can pick them apart with no consequence, and if they do, they feed into his game. It's a brilliant tactic and a use of a leg kick to not only break down his opponent like he did in the Chandler fight and the Ferguson fight, but it also breaks them down so that they keep pitfalling and falling into traps and they don't even realize it. Now, he will also sometimes add an inside leg kick. This is more of an in-between moment when nothing's happening, and it's an attack of opportunism where I don't want to commit and eat something. I'm just going to get a quick shot off and then reset. He's too far outside to do anything. He's not acting, like he's not pushing the progress forward. I'm going to catch an inside leg kick and reset. But then what he's really looking for, drop down, or drop down, throw the leg kick. If they throw back, like so. This is a common tactic of his. Now, these are some of the ways he'll pull out attacks. Other things he'll do. Sometimes it's enough to just backstep, right? Later on when we talk about counters, we'll talk about some of these tactics off of this. But sometimes letting guys walk you down is a great way of pulling out attacks. So you can enter into their range, or you can back up and draw them into yours. Now, he does have some other angles I want to talk about real quick. Sometimes you'll see him do stuff like He bounces back and forth, kind of playing with getting to a range, and it's a subtle thing where he changes it slightly. Sometimes he'll step off and hit an angle. Most of the time what he's looking for is stepping in deep or shoving. But remember we talked dilemma principle. If they don't engage with him, he's going to have to put the action on them a little bit. No problem. He has a couple of techniques in particular he likes to do that are all high advancing techniques where he shells to draw out attacks again. So in other words, if somebody starts backing up, they realize they're getting countered a lot. And they're like, I'm going to draw him back and make him come to me. Gaethje's like, okay, now this is not something he's done through his whole career. The last like 5 or 6 fights is where you start to see this more, where he starts pressing the action with a jab. This is something that Trevor Whitman teaches a lot. He loves this step jab where it's kind of like a skipping side kick. Back foot comes forward, front foot presses. Very similar. We talked about this in the Kamaru Usman breakdown. Foot comes forward, here. This hand will come up. It's very similar to what you see out of like George St. Pierre when he used to do his sliding jab in here to pick them apart from the outside and just hit the jab, and then he would get out and reset. He would just hit this, right? But the difference is that Justin Gaethje doesn't pull out afterwards. He's out here, and the guy's backing up. He takes a big step with his back foot. I'll back up a little bit to cover the distance. Takes it back. His back foot moves forward. Now, he immediately covers back to his shell. What do you think they're going to do? They just got jabbed from a range. They're thinking counters. Bam, bam. And he's back to his countering game, right? Once again, he's being offensive to pull out more attacks. So once again, he's here. If they continue to back up, he blitzes on them. You know what I mean? Like if they're not going to engage with him, he'll continue to press the action on them. But a lot of times he knows that just the action of this jab is going to bring an attack at him, so he's going to shell up and then catch him here. Sometimes he'll also use what I call a springing cross, where he's in here, and instead of doing the back step to push up, he just takes a big step and he kind of pushes forward into this, throws this big cross. A lot of times he'll follow it, punctuate it with like a gazelle hook, where he goes, right? And he just kind of here and just kind of slides forward into a big hook. Very like Joe Frazier in the approach. So this is the type of stuff he'll do if they start backing up a little bit. From here, before we get into counters, I might as well talk about his cage offense a little bit. He doesn't do a ton of clinching, but what he does is really successful. And if he does back guys up, this is a good spot to talk about it, because we talk about, okay, he starts backing them up, they start escaping. Now from here, what he'll do a lot of times is use his lead hand as a post. This is important in a lot of his defense anyway. He'll shell, but he also likes to use, particularly once again over the last 5 or 6 fights, you see this more, this lead hand posting here. And it's just kind of creating, getting in the way, almost like you do with a long guard, where he'll post on the shoulder and start coming in. When he backs guys up, this is a tactic of his. Now sometimes he'll get to a collar tie and start throwing this kind of stuff here, but that's not very long. He doesn't stay there long. He gets here, and then he gets back out. He gets it here, puts them in place, throws a combination, stays on top of them, posts, and he uses the post to kind of keep them in place so that he can throw his attack without them just escaping away very easily. He'll also use this post a little bit defensively. We'll talk about that more in counters here and get into that type of stuff. But I did want to kind of pay a quick note to the fact that when he does get guys to the cage, this is a common tactic. He'll jab them back, post, and throw. Occasionally throwing a collar tie, getting to an uppercut. He doesn't do a lot of collar ties because he doesn't want to clinch a lot and he doesn't want to take down a lot. Okay? So that's going to do it for part 1. Next part we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about some combinations and counters that he likes to use. Okay, so last part we're going to talk a little bit about counters and combinations. So for combinations, we talked about a lot of the stuff that he does. He throws this leg kick to draw it out and go to this roll under the hook. He'll throw this advancing jab, and he throws this to start putting a cross behind it and come over top if guys start backing off. Or he starts throwing this big cross, and he follows it with a big hook as guys start running away. A couple other attacks that he likes to do on occasion that I just want to kind of give note to. One is that we talked about the inside leg kick. When he's on the outside and guys aren't engaging, he throws this quick inside leg kick sometimes. The other thing that he does that I like a lot is this front kick to the body. He doesn't do it a ton, but as guys are moving forward, if he doesn't feel like they're engaging in a way he wants, or maybe just to diversify his attacks, he'll sometimes put a front kick right here in the low section, Gets their guard dropping down a little bit, diversifies his attacks. It's just kind of nice. He's also been known to occasionally throw a lead leg head kick. This is something that he doesn't do a lot, but when he's done it, it's like one of those things that he lands it clean, and I almost wish that people paid more attention to it because it's so successful. I actually wish he would do this a little bit more. And what happens is, as guys start pressing forward on him, if he starts backing off, sometimes he'll fall back in this shell here to cover up, and as their head's coming forward, he catches them with the head kick. It's not a crazy hard attack. It's just like a back up, pop. And he doesn't have to kick very high because their head is dropped down into it, right? He doesn't have to worry about like coming way up here. He doesn't need a ton of flexibility because he's drawing them down into it, shelling up, and he throws it right over the shoulder. And when he's thrown this, he's landed very clean on this. It's a nice little head kick that he throws in. He doesn't do it often, but when he does it, it is a very nice tactic. And I want to mention it because I like the idea of as guys are chasing you back, backing up with this shell, and falling back into the head kick and letting them drop forward into it. So that's most of the offense. Now, defensively, when you get into counters, this is the fun stuff here. I kind of break them down into proactive and reactive counters. And the way you can kind of tell the difference, especially, and this is something he does more over the last 5 or 6 fights. You know, he's always got a lot of head movement here and stuff like that. But sometimes when he's waiting for guys to come in, if he knows that they're coming, he'll be more proactive. And he drops straight into his attack. If they kind of catch him by surprise, he'll do a pull and then come down first. That's kind of how you know. And a lot of times when he does a pull, he puts the frame out, then he drops down, covers up high, and comes back. This is a common tactic of his. So both of them kind of lead to the same thing. They're just a little bit different. You know, when he comes in here, sometimes he'll come straight over the top with a cross. Sometimes he'll pull, drop, and when he drops, he likes to follow it with the left a lot of times. Now, what you'll find a lot of times is, if he's going to throw the left, a lot of times, he throws it after he comes down, right? There's a slight pause. But then the right, he throws it as he's coming down. It's just a nice difference in timing. And what it does is it throws guys off because it diversifies. So he comes in here, throws it at the same time, but then he might set it up a couple times first by coming in here, pop, dropping his head, and then throwing, right? So it's one, drop, throw, as opposed to one, drop, and throw. See the difference in the timing? He uses this, and it catches guys. Different angle, different direction, different timing. It messes guys up. But then what's really great is he uses this to set up really his most powerful weapon, his right hand uppercut. What he loves to do is, once he gets in here, react, drop low, throws his cross, and guys start dropping their heads down. He throws the hook so that as guys come forward, they start being concerned with this, putting their heads in the line for the cross, right? So it goes pop, pop. Then he comes in here, and once they start responding to this, he throws the cross, and they kind of walk into that. So what do guys do? Instead of throwing here, they start getting their head down to make sure that they're not going to eat that cross, right? It's a smart thing to do. So what does he do? He comes back, and he hits the uppercut. As they're dropping their head down to not eat that cross, and they're protecting themselves like they should be, he goes, okay, pop. And that's when he catches the uppercut. And that technique floors people. That is usually the one that he drops people with. So it essentially works where he comes in here, he throws the hook, and they go, okay. They start guarding against the hook. Then he goes, okay, pop, and he throws the cross down the range. So they go, okay, I gotta drop my head here so I don't eat the cross or the hook. Then he goes, bam, and he catches the uppercut, and that's what drops him. And if they start defending that, how do they defend the uppercut? They start bringing their head back up, right? It puts them in a dilemma. Once again, they keep going from bad position to bad position to bad position. It's catch-22, endless circle. And this is why he just keeps catching guys, because he puts them in this dilemma that there's no way out of. So it kind of ends up in a situation where he sits back, right? As guys come at him, right? He starts catching them with this stuff over and over again. If they happen to glance on him, no problem. It's all bouncing off of them. So they start backing off. So what does he do? He starts putting it on them. Chasing him down. Then they start coming back at him. And he goes, okay, and he starts throwing this circle where he starts going, okay, bam, hook, cross. They drop their head, bam, uppercut. And this is how he lays people out. It's such a fantastic system. It's very effective, and he can consistently do it over and over again. And what's great about this is a good example of a strong defense makes it possible to be strong offensively. Because he knows most of what comes at him is going to glance off, and because he doesn't open himself up for a lot, he can be free when he does throw. He knows he's hitting him at an off timing where they're colliding. Okay, their hands are dropped because they just threw, and he catches them back. He catches them at an in-between timing as they're advancing in, right? He's catching them on the reset when they're not paying attention, right? They just threw, lost in exchange, he starts to back up, he goes, okay. This type of stuff allows him to slowly pick guys apart with just a better system. And when you add into that the high shell and these angle changes where he's not just standing in front of them the whole time, adding in good defensive principles, it's very hard to catch. His head's always moving, he's shelling a lot, his feet are active. It's very tough to beat a guy who you can't hit. So that's really kind of the basis of his system. I hope you enjoyed this. If there's things in here that you would like to see covered, or if there's other fighters that you'd like to see me cover, make sure you throw it in the comments below. And for God's sake, hit the subscribe button. Let's help rebuild this channel. Thanks, guys.